My buddy Hal brought in his new to him 2010 Victoria Ivy League. He got this after having played a 59 Harvard that I had in a few months back. The Ivy League is essentially a Harvard with a 12-inch speaker. More on that to come. I want to preface this by saying a lot of the things I'm about to show you are not the faults of Victoria and are not the faults of warehouse guitar speakers. These are faults caused by poor workmanship from whoever owned this amp before Hal. We'll get into it. Anyway, just remember, what I'm about to show you is not Victoria's fault, and it's not Warehouse's fault. It's a beautiful amp. It's well covered in tweed. It's all lacquered. It's beautiful. I'm going to make sure that those baffle screws are tight. Those often work loose on tweeds. And on the rear, you can see it's got a Warehouse Veteran 30, which is usually a great choice. Hal did not like the sound of it. I thought, well, that's odd. Usually that's a pretty good speaker. We'll show you why he didn't like this speaker in just a little bit. But first, let's take the rear panel off. No shielding on the back of the rear panel. Let's see if the amp needs it. I can always add it if so. And looking through everything, pretty standard stuff. Got a 6AV6 preamp tube, which is essentially just one half of a 12AX7. And then a 12AX7, two 6V6s, and then a 5V4 rectifier. For some reason, the speaker plug says monster cable. That does not sound like a Victoria thing. But anyway, taking a slightly closer look, I noticed that the output tubes are not the same. One of these things is not like the other. We'll see if they're actually a good match or not. Looking at the circuit, it's pretty standard stuff. It has the same poorly implemented standby switch that those Dr. Z's had last week, where the standby is between the rectifier tube and the first filter cap. That's not so good, but doc, etc., just don't use it. The rest of the amp is pretty simple, pretty straightforward. No big surprises here. Nothing bad, nothing phenomenal, but simple is a good thing. That non-original resistor is in the bias supply. I'll later verify that that was a good choice, and if so, I'll probably put in a carbon comp that matches everything else, just to make it pretty. But when I powered the amp up and fired it up for the first time, we had a big problem. I'm checking for microphonics. Check and see if the speaker's buzzing, and look at there, the speaker moves. That shouldn't be doing that. Let's find out why. Alright, all the speaker hardware was loose, some of it dramatically so. I'll show you a bit more of that later in the video, but here I've tightened it up, and let's see if the sound improves. Somewhat, but you can see as I touch that 6V6, the noise changes, and weird squeals and stuff starts to happen. So that is a bad 6V6. It is not going to make it. It's not going to be long for this world. So with the test pair of 6V6s, all those problems are gone. A new matched pair of TAD Red Bass 6V6 GTs are on the way as we speak. One other thing I'll be changing is the volume pot here. The CTS just has nothing below, about 8:30 o'clock. This problem is all too common, but it's easily solved. So let's take a look at the speaker stuff. That monster plug is hot garbage. It's really cheap and poorly soldered. Sadly, because of the poor installation and that frame moving around, the frame is bent, the speaker buzzes, the speaker sounds bad. It is a terrible waste of what would have been a fantastic sounding speaker. I spoke to the owner about replacements and the sounds he was trying to get, and we've got a good choice on the way, but put in the comments what you think we should put in here. The other end of the speaker cable, really, really bad frayed connections, no good. Basically glorified tack soldering. That's not going to make it. Whoever put this speaker in here has never put a speaker in before, and I'm trying to be nice to them, but sometimes it's hard. You see all that gasket there, that foam gasket on the rear? That's supplied with this speaker, but it's only there to be used if you're doing a front-loaded cab install. From a rear-loaded cab install like this, it's not needed, but it also makes it really hard to put the mounting hardware in place, and they got that wrong. It was not tight in the slightest. I've tightened it, but it cannot be saved at this point. Speaking of which, for some reason, they removed the number 6 Keps nuts that came from Victoria and put in standard hex nuts that hold the baffle to the front. That's no good. So I'll be removing these and putting in the correct washers and 632 Keps nuts and making everything bulletproof. But why? Why do people do this kind of thing? But at the end of the day, despite someone's best efforts, this amp is in pretty good shape and it's going to sound fantastic for a long time once a few little things are done right.